हर साल 15 लाख से भी ज्यादा लोग इंजीनियरिंग करते हैं। कॉलेज में बीकॉम, बीसीए या बीटेक पर 3 या 4 साल की मेहनत और पैसा खर्चते हैं, फिर भी 93% लोगों को नौकरी नहीं मिलती।
बेकरी शॉप पे एज ए लेबर, मतलब नॉर्मल जो होते हैं वैसे जॉब लगी थी, तो मैं वहाँ पे 12 घंटे काम करना होता था और 30 के 30 दिन जाना होता था।
बचपन में जब मैं छोटा था, जब पापा दिल्ली आए थे तो उस समय रिक्शा चलाते थे।
10th मैंने पास कर ली थी, फिर उसके बाद मुझे छोड़ना पड़ा था।
खेती इतनी थी नहीं कि भाई पापा इतना कमा सकें, खेती में से खा ही पाते थे, लेकिन जो भी अपनी ज़रूरतें होती हैं वो पूरी नहीं कर पाते थे। ऐसा था
बचपन से दिमाग में ये था कि साइंस वाले बनते हैं सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर। सोचा नहीं था हम भी बन सकते हैं, तो वो ज़रूरी नहीं है। खाली बस इंग्लिश समझ सके और थोड़ी बहुत मैथमेटिक्स आना चाहिए, जिससे लॉजिकल दिमाग लगा सके बस। अब वो 10th पास बच्चा भी कर सकता है।
और कॉलेज में मुझे नहीं लगता कि कोई इतना जल्दी सीख सकता है जितना हम यहाँ पर सीख रहे हैं।
हाँ, हमारी तो लाइफ चेंज हो गई एक तरह से।
कुछ अलग ही सोचा है, जैसे कि अपना स्टार्टअप करना चाहता हूँ।
अभी मैं ऑगमाइस लैब में जॉब कर रहा हूँ और वहाँ पे मेरी सैलरी भी 35,000 है।
Hi everyone, I'm so pleased to have Abhishek Gupta with us today. Abhishek is the founder and CEO of Navgurukul, a non-profit that provides a fully funded residential course in software programming to underprivileged students. Founded in 2016, Navgurukul aims to transform higher education through its unique employability programs. So far, Navgurukul has trained 100 students in software coding and help them in finding their aspirational jobs. Welcome, Abhishek.
Thank you so much, Harsha.
So let me begin by asking you about your personal journey. You graduated from IIT and I'm sure the world was laid out for you. So what made you leave your job and do something which is so niche?
It didn't happen just after IIT. In fact, when I was in college, I was thinking of what to do. And I was very clear I'm not going to do a job. And that's when I started thinking of starting a startup. And fortunately, within 6 months of my college, the startup got acquired. So I think at an early age, I could feel some kind of content with success and also some financial freedom. And that made me to think my relationship with money. And I think that was one of the most important questions that I asked at that point of time. And I still reflect back and feel happy about it. There were a few things that I realized. One, I have to prioritize how much do I need and what for. And this made me question my relationship with a lot of things that I had to buy, my clothes, the food, etc. And interestingly, slowly I started realizing that whenever I need to make money, I'll make money. Right now, I need to follow my interest and passion. So then I started thinking, what is my passion? And while doing this, I was already co-founder and CTO of another startup where we reached about 18 crores. We were doing pretty well as an organization, but at the same time, my interest was getting diverted to my own interest and passion. And that's where I realized that I do have this very strong urge to work on social sector. And I did not know on what, basically. I think my answer came in form of education for a very simple reason that in middle class, you always hear that beta पढ़ ले कुछ अच्छा हो जाएगा. So you have this feeling that if education is all right, probably people can take care of themselves. So because that I started working in education largely because I did not know the sector. I didn't know how government hospital looked like, etc. So then I started working with Delhi government pro bono as a full-time volunteer. And over there I realized that so many students are supported in terms of their primary and secondary education by the government. But when it comes to higher education, they're almost either given tokenism kind of education or they are almost left behind. So when we would talk to students and ask them what do you want to do, mostly they would end up saying things that were not within their reach. For example, I'll become an IAS officer. They didn't have a path to it, they didn't have any, it just was a dream without any basis. Or they will say things which were so grounded that it sounded bad, like something like I just want to become a data entry operator. And it's nothing against being a data entry operator. It's against someone not being able to dream because there's so many chains which are basically saying that you cannot do this, you cannot do that. And obviously those chains are much higher for women basically. And that's why we decided we want to create courses where people can come, they learn, and they get whatever jobs they have aspiration for. We started with software programming because that's what we knew very well because of our own background, me and Rishabh, my co-founder. And now we have started more courses, including in design and working towards a pilot on social rural development. But the idea for what we are trying to do is to create a 1-year residential kind of program where students come, learn, and get a job. So the entire focus is to make sure that they are financially sustainable and able to take care of themselves and their family.
So did you choose software engineering for its employability factor?
Absolutely. I think employability factor was a big one, but also at the same time, we were trained as software programmers. I have spent more than 4 years by then in the industry as a software programmer, hired like more than 150 people. So I think there was a lot of comfort around knowing exactly how it works. So for example, now when we're doing this design course, we have designers who are doing that. So I think for us, it was much easier to work on that course. But yes, I mean, employability was a strong advantage. People were willing to hire without degrees, which was even a bigger plus. I think many things essentially helped us. And I think the growth path is crazily good. Like, I mean, our students may start with 20,000-25,000, but they end up earning 40,000-50,000 in 2 to 3 years, which for them, from where they're coming from, is a huge markup.
So how were the first few years?
To be honest, it seems like we're still living the first few years. Like every year is an naya problem, naya solution, naya startup. Basically, when we started, I think the biggest roadblock was that we were doing a residential 1-year course. And being a long course, people were really scared of sending their students to us. So to the point they'll ask, would you take kidneys of this or whatever? So we had to literally print it out, our resumes, our degrees, our whatever documents that we could find to suggest that no, we are not going to do that. The better things to do if we were to earn money. And in fact, that was very interesting because the campus was in Delhi and we were talking about boys. Right now, we have campuses in Bangalore and Dharamshala, and people are sending the girls from Bihar to Bangalore. So that's how, the trust, essentially, I mean, that's the kind of journey that we have taken, where the parents are not willing to send their sons to our campus in the same city. Now parents are willing to send their daughters at their age of about their marriage, like, plus minus 6 months, from Bihar to Bangalore. And this is very important to sort of appreciate, because for them, Bihar to Bangalore is 3 days of journey. It's not for them to take a flight and, take a cab and then take a flight and reach to a campus. So I think that was one of our major roadblocks. And even today it is like, not every parent gets convinced. Many students still do not come. But still, at least from our side, we have been able to create a huge amount of trust for parents to make a decision. I think secondly, there's a lot of pessimism around what we were doing. We were like, ye to nahi hoga. Mostly people would tell, 1 saal mein how can you make someone a software engineer? Colleges take 4 years and then they fail. And the people they're teaching, they already know English, they already know maths, they already have exposure to computers. Your students are not going to have any of it, and you only are going to have 1 year. And then you want to take 1/4 time. You're going to take students with much lower baselines, and you want to do it in somewhere around 1/15 of the cost. And on top of that, you want to guarantee a job. So it's just, it's too good to be true. And in fact, to the point that we went to the donors and they're like, it cannot happen. We're not funding this. It's not going to happen. Parents are going to say the same thing. It cannot happen. मेरे बच्चे को ये नहीं आता, वो नहीं आता, वो प्रोग्रामिंग कैसे सीखेगा, वो कैसे कंप्यूटर की जॉब करेगा? They didn't know प्रोग्रामिंग क्या होता है, but they were very confident कि उनके बच्चे नहीं कर पाएंगे. और शुरुआत में ऐसा होता था कि जब भी बच्चा कुछ बीमार हो जाता था, कुछ हो जाता था ना, so the parent used to call that child and say, मुझे पता था नहीं हुआ, आजा घर पे, नहीं होना था उससे वैसे भी. So I mean, there's a lot of discouragement, I think, overall from the people, etc. And everyone is like, आप residential क्यों कर रहे हो, आप software programming क्यों कर रहे हो, आप इनको सिलाई बुनाई सिखा दो, accounting सिखा दो. So I think we had to really be very arrogant about our beliefs. We're like, okay, this is what we believe and we are going to do it. Worst case, it's not going to take 1 year. It might take 1.5 years. It may take 2 years. But we were very clear that we have to accomplish this. And fortunately, it happened in a year and we were able to follow most of our promises, including a guaranteed job, which can be a very tricky thing. So yeah, I think those are the 2 major challenges. And then when we started the girls batch, the similar issues happened at a much larger gravity with the girls. Eve teasing and harassment was another issue when we started our girls campus, and we had to do a lot of work to make sure that that is not happening. There was just almost 2 months of stir where we didn't know how to sort of run that campus, to be honest. And still, you feel really young that I'm like right now we are having a capacity of 150 students and we are adding 350 more. and it seems like a big responsibility to handle, especially because most of these are women. Like with 500 students, we'll have 450 of them as women and only 50 as boys. So I think we still struggle sometimes to understand how to take care of all of that responsibility.
Abhishek, before we go further, tell us a bit about your flagship program.
Right. So our flagship program is to guarantee a job, basically. It's very simple. We say we keep on teaching children without necessarily altering their outcome in the ways they want to. So what we realized was the student need jobs. They need financial security. They need confidence. They need network. So we have a 1-year residential course. People come, they learn by themselves. There is no teacher. There is no cooking, cleaning, any staff. And in this course, they build their confidence, they build their network, and they get a job. And that's what we do.
So how does Navgurukul reach out to students?
So when we started Navgurukul, we realized that we do not want to duplicate the work. So wherever we possibly could, we wanted to partner. So for admissions, we realized that we want to have diversity of students coming to our campuses. So in our campus in Bangalore, we have girls from almost 12 to 15 different states of the country, students who are HIV positive, students who are domestically abused in their marriages, etc. And now they've joined us. So we decided to partner with different organizations who can allow us to have access to these diverse group of students. So recently we are trying to work on students who have been trafficked and now they're into shelter homes and they need support. So again, the idea is that we reach out to these organizations, we tell them that this is our program. You basically just ask your student to give our entrance examination, all of which is built through technology. They go and do it. And then if they're selected, we invite them to our campus. And obviously there are many levels to it. We look for English, we look for maths, we also focus on culture. We've tried to reduce the level as much as possible. We have, the student need to have 6th grade of English skills and 8th grade of math skills. But unfortunately, in India, even that is very hard. People finish their 12th class and they still do not know even basics of English and basics of mathematics. So we do have, unfortunately, those barriers. And to reduce those barriers, we have started our own system of online teaching, which is a 3-month course. With the students who could not clear our test, we basically invite them to join this course, learn, and keep giving the test so that they can pass at some point.
That's great. Abhishek, you teach computer programming to students who probably have never used computers in their life and know very little English. Isn't that a tall order?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why we faced a lot of pessimism when we started, that this is not possible to achieve. And I think I personally feel that the kind of potential which is out there in India, especially there are so many bright students sitting and waiting in the villages who are so aspirational, so hardworking, such a growth mindset, and yet they're not even given a chance. And we just refuse to work on this problem. The way I try to imagine, and I do that with a lot of entrepreneurs who come to us and they say, "Ki hame bhi aisa kuch karna hai. We want to start our own course on counseling psychology. We want to start our course on design." I ask them very simply: do not make this a question of if. Make this a question of what it takes to accomplish this. So the question is not can we do that? The question is what does it take to do that? Would it take us 1 year? Would it take us 6 months? Would it take us 2 years? Would it take us some of the best teachers? Can we do it without teachers? But the moment we basically make it a question of if, we basically are allowing the fact that these students will never have access to aspirational mainstream courses. And I refuse to accept that. So I think you can call it arrogance, you can call it stubbornness. But I think somewhere that helped us to say, ki, nahi, we want to do this and we're going to do this. And this is something that still happens. We want to do a course on counseling psychology. We want to do a course on social rural development. And people do come and say, ये तो नहीं होता, counseling के लिए आपको ये करना पड़ता है, वो करना पड़ता है, 5 साल यहाँ लगाने पड़ते हैं. And I understand that. I understand the nuances of being a psychologist. But I also understand that there are people in our villages who are not earning even 100 rupees a day. The people who cannot afford mental health counseling. Because we need to, there's so limited number of counselors, we end up paying 1,000 or 2,000 rupees per session. There's a clear, huge market gap. Why cannot you train? Again, the question is not if. The question is, what would it take? Would it take us 1 year? Would it take us 2 years? Would it take us 3 years? We don't know. My guess is it will take us 2 years. But we are definitely going to give it a shot.
That's commendable. So these students who come to you, do they show a very strong will to learn, or sometimes they lose interest midway because they must be facing problem in learning English, learning computers?
I think, as I mentioned, most of the students that we teach are women, and their inspiration or motivation to learn is to really get outside their marriage. Like they don't want to get married, basically. So, अगर आप पूछोगे ना, why are you basically doing this course? They don't care about software programming.
Okay.
What they care about is basically getting a job so that they can choose to do what they want to do with their lives, and that is what drives them. And other kind of motivation that we have seen is कि किसी ने बोल दिया, चाचा ने बोल दिया, मामा ने बोल दिया, and especially for a girl, आपके पास कम से कम 10 लोग होते हैं जो बताते हैं कि आप कुछ नहीं कर पाओगे. So essentially they want to prove, यार मैं कर सकती हूँ. My brother did it, but I'll do better, and they have done it, interestingly. So I think that motivation is there, but at the same time, somewhere I do feel that they're not necessarily interested in the topic, and that's why our inclination to add more courses soon. And a lot of them are not interested in programming, and in between they start losing interest, but then they remind themselves, they counsel each other and say, no, हमें तो करना है. Maybe 5 years later हमें जो बनना है बन जाएंगे, but for now we'll do this, we'll get a job and we'll figure it out.
So what are the course you want to start in the future?
Right. So as I mentioned, we have already started software programming. That's something we're doing for 4 years. We have started a pilot for graphics design, and we're almost about to finalize a course on social and rural development.
Also, the students come from diverse background, which means their foundational knowledge is not uniform. So how do you deal with that?
So our pedagogy is basically such that we are not assuming that people are going to be on the same baselines.
Okay.
One of the very interesting comic that I read was essentially about an examiner sitting with certain animals like fish, elephants, etc., and he asked that, I'm going to give you a test. Here's a tree, please climb.
Mm-hmm.
And then the joke there is that, all of these different animals have different capabilities to climb the tree. So you can't ask an elephant or a fish or a monkey and a bird to do the same race. And that's basically critique on our education system. That's how our education system is. We expect people to learn at same speeds or appear in the same evaluation, while no two people are same, and the differences are significant. Even in the system where we expect them to be uniform, it does not happen. Even in schools, we may think all of the students are in 7th class. No, they have extremely different learning levels. Just that we completely stay oblivious to it, because in our mind, at the level of our policies, we feel all of them are at the same level because they have finished their 6th class. That's not true. That's why when they come to 7th class, they struggle because they don't know the concepts of 6th class. So our approach is very simple. One, we had to remove the shame and the romanticism of being in a higher grade. So what we did was, instead of saying grades or classes, both of words which we do not agree with, we basically say, these are your milestones. So you basically do first milestone, the second milestone, the third milestone, and you basically continue to do them at your speed. And the idea is that every student is appreciated for their learning speed. And instead of telling a monkey that you climbed the tree faster than the elephant, we really see if the elephant put in more effort than the monkey. That's what the most important thing for us. So let's say Harsh and Abhishek are learning, and the mentor is someone called a tree, and the tree basically looks at, in that given time, who was the one who's working harder? Who was the one who's helping the community out? So instead of focusing on the outcomes, our system focuses on the inputs and the values that you bring to the table. So if you are doing that all right, we love you, and we feel that you're going to make it happen. Again, sooner or later, it does not matter. We have had students who took 1.5 years. We have had students who took 6 months. We never really post about someone taking 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. We see that as a problem of privilege. People who are more privileged, they have access to better English classes, they'll take 6 months. People who are less privileged, they'll take more months.
So you have found a very unique solution to such a complex problem. That's really great.
Yeah, I think for us, it was about really treating them as our children, right? We don't want to compare our children. Most of the parents are, especially the ones who think about it, they don't want to compare their children against each other.
Right.
They very simply, they'll say, "Ye bahut mehnat karta hai." And also it happens because parents see you. In schools, we want to turn a blind eye. We don't even want to observe कि कौन मेहनत कर रहा है, कौन नहीं कर रहा है. मैं तो ये कैसे ऑब्जर्व करेंगे, ये कैसे मेजर करेंगे, ये कैसे एनालाइज करेंगे, इसका रिपोर्ट कार्ड कैसे बनाएंगे. So इसके वजह से हमने उसको हटा दिया. We want to be oblivious to what someone brings to the table. And I think our approach is we try to be like really, we try to take it from a parenting angle. if these are our children, would you want to compare them? No. Would you ever want to tell them that yo, you did the best? No. You want to really appreciate तुमने सबसे ज़्यादा रूम साफ करने में मेहनत की है. हो सकता है उसका रूम में मतलब कुछ और चीजें थी. So I mean that's the basic philosophy. Very simple things. I mean none of those are fancy things. But yeah, took us some time to implement them.
So also you have tailor-made the software engineering curriculum to fit it into a one-year program. How have you done that?
So one of the problem situations, I mean, one of the things that I really dislike about education system is it's missing the context. You look at a country like India where about 65% people are still into farming, and then you have a book which basically sort of does not even talk about farming in a good light. The gentleman is always wearing a coat. A farmer is never going to wear a coat. You know, the kind of clothes that a farmer is supposed to wear, you will not see gentlemen wearing them. You will not see conversation about gobar. So you read those books and you hate gobar. So essentially what these books do is, for the majority of the people, you strip their pride. You tell them that who you are is basically a gawar. You know, I mean, and we have our own judgment locks. कि इसको English खराब है इसलिए गवार है, इसका ये है. What does गवार even mean? It's not even supposed to be a gali or a bad thing. Someone's supposed to be from a village. Someone that's गांव से वो word आता है. पर अभी क्या है कि अच्छा आपकी accent है तो आपको नहीं आता होगा बोलना सारी चीजें. So I think for us, the most important thing has been to bring our curriculum in their context, so that it's not that they're learning programming from an angle of how. So, for example, when you learn programming, on the examples that they start with is to make a tip calculator. These students don't need a tip calculator. I mean, I don't think they're tipping someone right now. They should be working, let's say, on a menstrual hygiene clock to understand to take track of your periods, or to work on problems on. So another example, let's say instead of working on Alcoholics Anonymous, they might need to work on a group like which teaches them self-defense and is a decentralized process. So I think the kind of things that we need to know about has to be contextualized. And that's where we had to redefine our curriculum to bring that into context and perspective, and also bring it in Hindi. Largely that came because if I ask you to learn programming, that's fine. But if I ask you to learn programming in Spanish, assuming you don't know Spanish, that's not very cool, because you have to learn something in a language that you're not familiar with. So we were very clear that they have to have a course in Hindi, but we treat that as a bridge course. So what we say is, okay, Harsha, you start learning Spanish also, you start picking this course in your native language, and after a certain point of time, you're going to switch to this course in Spanish, because unfortunately, that's how industry operates. So the outlook is to basically make sure that they have a smooth bridge, so that they don't feel ashamed. If the moment they come and you say, no, you have to learn in English, the child might be able to pick up programming, but they will feel suffocated by the experience of English. So that's why this bridge is there. So I think a lot of curriculum changes have happened to bring context and to bring language.
Also, Abhishek, you have not just redesigned the curriculum of software engineering, you have also reimagined and redesigned classroom learning, which is, of course, no mean feat. Can you explain that?
So one of the things that we decided about all of this is that we want to make it a trust-based system. Instead of having a teacher-centric model, we do not have any teachers at all. We basically have a mentor-centric model where every mentor is given 2 students. And essentially a mentor is also a part of the system, or a student basically. So if you come and join the campus right now, a 3rd month student or the 4th month student will be guiding you and will be taking responsibility of your learning. That person's responsibility will be taken by somewhere who's 7 months into the program, and so on. And finally, someone will be taken care by either a volunteer or an alumni who knows the industry. So in the last leg only, you're supported by external placeholders, people who might be our own alumni or experts basically. But that is required because then they have no seniors left in the system, I mean inside the campus. So I mean there's a lot of, and what it does is it allows students to understand how to explain and articulate. Doing something is, knowing and doing something is one part of it, articulating is completely another. So and when they learn how to teach, how to articulate, it's a very important skill for them, because when they're going to go into the industries, they have to do the exact same thing. They have to explain to their people what they have been up to, how they could do it, etc. So there's a direct benefit to them as a mentor, and obviously the student get a personalized mentorship, because instead of a teacher who might be taking care of 30 students, you have a mentor who's taking care of at max 2 students. So you will be basically the mentor will take care of your emotional understanding, will take care of are things already at your home. So there's a very strong personalization. There's an emotional angle to it. There's a social angle to it, because you are the part of the same community. and there's obviously a pedagogical and a learning element to it, where the mentor figures out what are the basis for your learning. Now, what we're also trying to do is we're trying to understand all the pedagogies that the system should have, and trying to document it, and trying to train mentors at that, so that mentors can also look at how they can learn better pedagogies in terms of teaching. But to sort of summarize, I think a lot of our classroom changes have been around having a completely personalized mentorship model, having a model which rewards input and the efforts instead of rewarding the outputs. And third is to basically make sure that we trust them with their learning and allow them to decide how things are going to be and intervene as little as possible.
Our country has made headway in primary education, but higher education is still in neglect. Not many innovations have taken place to redesign learning spaces that have the potential to level the playing field. So what are your views on that? You've already, you've given a unique approach to learning. So what are your views on this?
So I feel we do need to figure out a way to approach this employment-centric education. I do feel that there are many people who do not feel very comfortable with the idea, because they feel at an early age, if we do that, we might hamper the social emotional learning of the student. I understand the concerns. I just feel that there are ways to work on that. And fortunately, it has been happening. Vocational education has been given a lot of stress, this national education policy. So government is also recognizing the fact that we need to come up with more employability related skills at an earlier age rather than later. The second thing is we need to be really serious about about providing spaces for people to learn in a more rigorous environment, I would say. I mean, most of the government approaches are essentially centered around ITIs or open courses. Unfortunately, what this does is it shoves away the responsibility from the government and puts it on the student. Achha, you enrolled for an open degree or course, and what government does is, our numbers are very high. So many people are enrolled into our open courses. Now we have been advancing. We are into e-learning, but the fact is that e-learning is not resulting into people getting jobs right now. And there are hundreds of reasons for that, and we can get into details of that. But the point is that what we do need is a very rigorous kind of environment, especially given the gap that exists between the aspirational jobs and where our students are. And we need to make sure that the students can go through these experiences to be able to pick up the careers that they are interested in. So I think my urge is to sort of suggest people, entrepreneurs, to think about how do we build these high intensity courses. And it can be in any field. You might do in graphics, digital marketing, counseling psychology, software programming, journalism, any course basically. But you spend sufficient time on that.
Right. So we need a job market driven education.
Absolutely. And you can, I think, take example of content writing and journalism, right? I mean, it's not that you necessarily need to go through a college to be a good content writer or journalist. Right. Just that our entire system is basically focused around that. And that is more disadvantageous to people who find it very hard to access these colleges. So what if someone who's into journalism, spent 20 years in the industry, is now basically willing to start a course and figure out an approach to train people rigorously to make sure that within 1 year or again 2 years or 1.5 years, they become good content writers. They start with a fresher level job, but ultimately they have a growth path. So it's not something which is not doable. It's just something which requires a bigger leap of faith to say, I can do it with very different kind of environments than what we are sort of used to as people.
And I think we need that because we have the world's largest pool of working age youth. So we desperately need this kind of environment where we have job-driven education, which can lead to employment.
Yeah, I fully agree. In fact, this is very important because, again, education system, you really need to question what education system is meant to do, right? I mean, it's meant to give you employability. It's meant to give you social emotional learning. It's meant to help you understand your own agency. It's meant to help you understand your role in the community. Nothing is happening. I mean, people are getting distant from their roots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. So why do you think innovations have not taken place, just barring a handful like Barefoot College or the Sonam Wanchuk's College or Swaraj University? Yeah. Not many people have thought of, giving a twist or giving a new approach to learning. You have found such a unique solution to such a complex social problem. So why we haven't done it?
And I'm really thankful for bringing these names up for many reasons. When I started working in this sector, these are the examples. I mean, these were the organizations we visited, and they had a phenomenal impact on how we think about education. So in fact, a lot of things that I have sort of taken, given funda about, they're essentially picked up from these organizations. And I really remember Sonam saying that most of the impactful solutions are going to be really, really simple. And that thing stayed with us because what it basically means is that you just have to look at things in a principled manner. And the principles are typically very simple. So when we say we are not going to judge you on outcomes, we are going to judge you on the basis of the effort you're putting in, it's a very, very simple principle. And with just that one principle, you can fundamentally change your pedagogies. I think, unfortunately, there's a mad rush for doing what the industry has always felt comfortable with. We all want to go to IITs. We all want to go to, we're very comfortable spending lakhs and lakhs of money going to for a higher education, basically, if we afford it. If we can't afford it, we are willing to take loans for that. So I think it takes a lot of guts to sort of challenge that, and people are not willing to take that risk for themselves. That's number one. And that's where when I met Rishabh, and he actually dropped out of his school after 10th class, and we started this organization together. I find this contrast very interesting because I did my IITD in a most conventional manner, did coaching, etc. and this guy, he was 4 years younger to me, smarter, better coder.
Right.
I mean, it's just phenomenally interesting because the time that I spent in the college, I also learned. I mean, I'm not against the time I spent in the college, especially because the network was amazing. Many things were great. At the same time, it's very hard to get in. So I also know of many people who wanted to get there, who couldn't get there, and they destroyed their lives. So essentially, I think that level of thinking is entirely missing from us. We've been not willing to take that risk with ourselves. So when we're not willing to take that risk to ourselves, it's harder to extend that risk to other people, right? I mean, something you're not willing to do. Let's say as a journalist, you're not willing to consider people who do not have degrees and who have learned by themselves. How would you open up that institution? And our institutions basically force us, नहीं, आपको 6 साल का experience चाहिए, आप इस बड़े-बड़े mass comm college से ये पढ़े होने चाहिए, वो पढ़े होने चाहिए. You go to jobs like even if you've done IIM, they'll say no, you have to be from IIM Bangalore or IIM Ahmedabad, or you have to be from IIT Delhi or IIT Bombay. Like we have all these discrimination levels. Somewhere it is so internalized, we don't want to challenge it. But even Barefoot, right? I mean, Barefoot started working with grandmothers, taught them to work on solar tools, and such that these grandmothers were installing solar panels throughout the country, and they expanded outside India.
Right.
And that level of thinking, right? Sonam Wangchuk worked with dropouts. He made them into sort of people who knows architecture and can build build houses using sun and earth architecture. I think it requires a lot of leap of faith, and I really feel that when people hear this, they go and check out all these examples and say, "नहीं, मेरे को तो ये जिद है, मैं तो पढ़ा के रहूँगा."
Abhishek, coming back to Navgurukul, you have mentioned that Navgurukul invest close to 1 lakh on a students. So how do you fund everything? Do you have sponsors, grants coming?
Yeah, so we take CSR grants to do basic expansion. We raise individual money from people to work on innovations, and we basically talk to our alumni so that they pay forward for the next student when they get a job. So the idea here is that once you get a job, now you're let's say earning 25,000 rupees a month. Now you can start paying 2,500 rupees a month or so that the amount that was invested on you can be essentially invested on someone else. And what it allows us to do is to make sure that we're able to convince investors, our donors basically, that even for you, this is such a lucrative proposition, because if you're giving us 1 lakh per child, it's being reused every few years. So that's how basically our financial model works.
And how do you secure work placements for students? Do you have tie-up with IT companies?
Yeah, there are a lot of tie-ups that we have done. I mean, it's mostly sales. As you can imagine, like you have a product now and you have to go and sell it to people. Essentially, so we basically work with many companies, MNCs, startups, service-based companies. We work a lot on, especially with the people who have already hired from us, because they already have been able to create some kind of inclusive environment for our students to work. We try to work with the diversity and inclusion departments of many companies to figure out how eventually our students can join them. There's certain companies like ThoughtWorks, etc., which have put in a lot of effort to make sure that diversity and the inclusion has been a core part of their hiring policies. And I think there are many companies which are trying to sort of step up and do the same thing. So yeah, so I think mostly we work in conjunction with the HR departments and the diversity and inclusion departments to identify first, how do we get our first few placements in, And once we do that, after a certain time, we obviously try to upsell and say, oh, now you have 5, you have already tasted our product, you've got to have 50 now.
Okay. So are they mostly entry-level jobs?
Yes, mostly I would say 20,000 to 25,000 rupees entry-level fresher jobs. There are some students who get pays at 50K also, but those are in rarity basically.
Great, really wonderful. Thank you, Abhishek, for taking out time. It was really great talking to you. Really, all the best to Navgurukul.
No worries. Thanks so much for having me here.